All right, well, we're excited to be here. Thank you for assembling with us. We're excited to speak to the community and to students and to get a chance to answer any questions that you might have. So we'll take the first one. Anybody?
I have one.
You have one? Great.
So, based on the way the polls are going right now, what would you say is your game plan for post-November? Like, do you have a long-term, like, political goal?
What do you mean by the polls, the way they're going right now?
The most recent polls that I've looked at show that Donald Trump is at 42% and you were polling at 21%.
Well, I think you haven't seen the most recent polls, which just came out. Deseret just published a story that has Donald Trump, I believe, at 33 and us at 28.
Okay.
So it's a close race, and 25% or 24 or 25%, according to the article, have not yet made a final decision. So it's a close race, and Utahns are still making up their minds, many of them, according to the poll. So we're very excited. We've said all along that we think this will be a close race here in Utah. We're the only campaign that has a ground game. We have a lot of momentum. We have a lot of enthusiasm. We have volunteers getting out the vote. We have a get out the vote strategy that is unmatched by any of the other presidential campaigns. And again, we think that the polls that are going to be coming out now will show that it is indeed a close race.
I've got a question, Evan.
Yeah.
So for a long time, one of the main goals of your campaign has been to try and force either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump to not have a majority in the Electoral College. And for some time, Hillary Clinton was kind of rising the polls, so it looked more unlikely, but now it's becoming a little closer.
Right.
Do you think that you can still force the Electoral College to not have a majority either way?
Well, yeah, and for a while the race was not close, and now it's getting closer. So the extent that the race is close, the closer it is, the greater the chances that we'll be able to block them both by winning a state or two. That's our electoral goal. We have other electoral goals and other goals. You know, more fundamentally, we're standing on principle for what we know is good and true, and the foundational American ideals that have made our country great, have made our country powerful and prosperous, namely that all men and women are created equal and that we all have inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those foundational principles should inform our policies in this country, meaning returning power to the people, returning power to the states, so that it's accountable to us, so that we can self-rule as our founders envisioned that we would. And this is important for unifying our country. And so these are the things that we stand for. We're very excited about just standing on principle. Then we have the electoral goals, and then we have what comes next, which is what I think you were getting at, and that is that we are building a new conservative movement in this country. In just 2 months and 3 weeks, we already have enormous momentum with this. It is something that will extend beyond the election. It's important that we have as strong of a showing as we can, win or lose in Utah and in other states, so that we have as much momentum going forward as we can. Either we'll use that to help reform the Republican Party so that it's open to people of all races and religions, and so that it's, doesn't abuse and disrespect women, or if it continues down a path of sexism and xenophobia and racism and populism, then we'll have to perhaps start something new.
Just yesterday, the Cache County GOP chair said that people who are considering a vote for your campaign should not even consider themselves part of the Republican Party. What's your response to that?
Mindy, what do you think about that?
Well, look, I think the Republican Party is in disarray. Donald Trump is not a conservative. The Republican Party, when I was a part of it, was a party that represented conservative ideals. Donald Trump has taken it in a different direction, so it's no surprise that people are standing up and saying, we need to stand on principle. Principles are more important than party. People are more important than party. The party is very concerned about that. It knows that it's losing a lot of its most faithful members. It's losing women. It's losing young people. It's losing out on an opportunity to win over Hispanic Americans and African Americans. This is why we're standing up. We're standing up for the country. But in terms of building this new conservative movement, it is a movement that welcomes and values and respects all. And I think a lot of people, and I know a lot of people, are finding it appealing, more appealing than a party that they feel has left them.
As a third-party candidate, do you actually intend on winning the election?
Well, I'll clarify that we're independent candidates. We have no party, which makes what we're doing all the more challenging. When you have the backing of a party, there are a lot of things that come with that, ballot access, funding, etc., that make life easier. We're independents, however, complete, total independence, and still our goals are consistent with that and with those challenges. We are not saying that we believe we can win 270 votes on November 8th. That was never our plan. This is a 3-month presidential campaign that was solely launched to stand for what is right in this election and to have a chance at blocking Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. If we are to get to the White House, it will be because we've blocked both of them, because the race was very close, because we won a state or two, and then that would carry the election, the top 3 finishers, to the House of Representatives, where each state would get 1 vote. And in those circumstances, we actually like our chances quite a bit. We're the only truly conservative ticket in the race. We share many policy positions with the House Republicans. Donald Trump does not. And so I believe that we'll be able to make a case to them. And frankly, the Democratic states, or states currently with Democratic majorities, they will know that they will not have the votes needed to elect Hillary Clinton. And so they'll have a choice between Donald Trump or us. And I believe that they will prefer us. And so if we get that far, and it's very difficult, but if we're able to get that far, I believe that we could emerge as the consensus pick between the Republicans and the Democrats, and that's something that I think would be good for the country. Yeah.
If Republican congressmen will choose you in this scenario, then how come none of them have come forward to endorse you? And I don't mean that to like discredit what you're saying, but just that's one thing that we were wondering about is like why are people still voting for Trump?
Great question. You know, it's a great question. The reality is that I think many of our leaders lack the courage to stand up against the misogyny, the racism, the xenophobia of Donald Trump. He's running a campaign that has encouraged and empowered the white supremacist movement. He has brought about significant divisiveness in our country, significant discord. This is who he is. This is the kind of leadership, if you can call it that he is offering. So why our leaders would not stand up and stand up for us against the attacks that he has launched against different races and religions and women, why they would not do that is hard for me to explain. I will tell you that we've invited all of them publicly to join our cause. Mindy and I have met privately with many of them, including most senior elected officials here in Utah, and we have issued the invitation to them to stand up for what is right and to stand with us in this effort, the only true conservatives, standing for equality and liberty. They tell us privately, and we'll talk more about this in the event here. They tell us privately that they believe what we're standing for, but they are afraid to stand up to Donald Trump because they're afraid of being criticized or losing the votes of his supporters in their own re-elections. They're putting their own seats ahead of their own power, their own interests ahead of our interests and ahead of the interests of the country.
We should have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
I know both of you received pretty vicious response from some of the white nationalist crowd. And obviously you're part of that to Secret Service. Any developments on their, I guess, looking into it, and maybe what some of your thoughts on kind of the crowd that's come out of the woodwork in favor of Trump in that regard?
Well, I'll comment on sort of the threats themselves, and maybe Mindy, you could share some thoughts on what it means for their movement or whatever. But yeah, I would say that we're not surprised. I mean, it's shocking when you have someone, in this day and age, 2016, attack you based on your faith, attack your race or your gender, which is a hallmark of the Trump movement, the Trump campaign. It's gotten worse. So we have received death threats, as I think you pointed out. We've reported those to the authorities and appropriately, and we've also taken appropriate countermeasures to ensure our security. But it gets worse. The white supremacist movement has even called for a genocide of people of my faith. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and this is something that I think there should be no place for in our country. And but yeah, Donald Trump has empowered this movement in the country, and it's obviously a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, I think that these white nationalists and other hate groups are a small minority in this country, but unfortunately with Donald Trump's rhetoric, he's stoked that anger, he's normalized that behavior. This is why it's so concerning that some leaders have failed to repudiate him, because they've used their credibility to then enable Donald Trump, who's normalizing this white nationalism, anti-Semitism, calling for Mormon genocide. it's one of the reasons that we're in this fight. It's one of the very important reasons, because we believe there is no place for that in a healthy democracy. There is no place for that in the country, and somebody has to stand up and push back against it.
And I would say, just in light of these attacks on my faith, on the faith of many people in the state, how is it that our leaders are not standing up for those of us who have this faith? But it's not just about us. I mean, what we should know as true conservatives or as Americans is that when one of us is attacked, or when one group of us attacked, regardless of our faith or our gender or our race, it's an attack on all of us. And because it's an attack on our ideals, it's an attack on the truth that all men and women are created equal, and on liberty. And so our leaders need to stand up for us. They need to stand up for our ideals. We are doing that. We will not be intimidated by these threats, but we're calling on Utahns to stand with us in this fight, not only on November 8th, but also beyond, in this new conservative movement that will seek to include people of all races, who will seek to respect women and respect people of all faiths.
All right,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much.